As a presidential candidate, Donald Trump has no government record to weigh, but one way to consider the type of president he might be is by examining his business career, and particularly the way he handled his biggest crisis, the staggering debt he and his companies owed in the early 90s. Here with the story is Wall Street Journal news editor Peter Grant. Welcome, Peter. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Set the stage for us, if you will. What was Donald Trump facing in 1990? Did he risk losing his entire empire?
Donald Trump at that point was on the edge of the precipice. He owed $3.4 billion in debt, he and his companies, which he couldn't repay. Even more serious, $830 million of that debt he had personally guaranteed. So his creditors would have been able to push him into bankruptcy, personal bankruptcy, if they had wanted. You also have to remember the time. It was in the middle of a recession. The commercial real estate market was even worse than it was in this most recent downturn. So things were really bad. And people who were in better shape than him had to file personal bankruptcy.
So it was a dark time. And what sort of debt restructuring did he agree to? Was he happy about that?
Well, he was happy because it saved him.
Right.
It saved his career and his company and his organization. But at the time, it was a very painful thing for him to go through. He and a group of banks agreed to a restructuring of a big portion of his debt and a plan in which he basically agreed to sell off a lot of his assets. It was also embarrassing for him. He had to agree to an allowance for his personal and household expenses.
None too shabby, though. $450,000 a month?
Yeah.
You had to somehow squeak by on
exactly.
that?
Just about squeak by. But still, for someone of his ilk, of his celebrity and reputation, to agree to that was a bitter pill.
One of the things that struck me about your article was that the New Jersey Attorney General's office, that has been for years very closely studying all of these sort of financial arrangements of Trump and Atlantic City, says that some of this debt restructuring was so complicated that even after all these years, nobody in their office really understands it.
Well, first of all, it was very complicated. There were many interlocking pieces of his New York properties and the casinos and bondholders and creditors. It was fantastically complicated. But in the course of the reporting that Ali Berzon and I did, we found that he intentionally kept it complicated. He intentionally managed the information in such a way that he was really the only one who understood what was going on, and it worked.
It worked. Now, how long did it take for him to sort of get out of all of this debt, his personal debt? And we know he's okay now, but what about the contractors? Did they get what they were owed?
Well, the contractors working on some of his projects that had to go through bankruptcy, like the Taj Mahal, no, they didn't. And that's actually a standard thing in a bankruptcy, that contractors don't get paid 100 cents on the dollar, but it was painful for them. Trump's explanation is they had already made a lot of money on him, and this is just kind of the way business is.
But he's free and clear now.
Oh, yes.
Free and clear.
Yeah, by a long shot.
So what's the takeaway here? Is he just so good at deal making that he is sort of able to work his way out of these problems? Is he also such a personality that he's able to convince people that the worth of his real estate is tied to him personally? Well,
that's part of it. And he certainly saved himself partly because he was worth a lot more to his creditors out of bankruptcy than in bankruptcy. But I think another one of the takeaways is just the way that Trump conducts business. He has his own style. I mean, there's some people that if they borrow money, they feel obliged to pay it back no matter what. Through thick and thin, their handshake is their bond. Trump's view was somewhat different. I mean, his view was, if I owe people money, especially in a tough time like this, when my back is on the rope, I'll do what I can to not have to pay 100 cents on the dollar, to get out and not have to pay everything that I owe. That was his style, and it was effective.
Very interesting. It was indeed. Peter Grant, thank you so much for that great piece.
You're welcome.